so pleased to introduce Marco Piscitelli. Is that right? He's a registered architect and architecture teacher scholar at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And as the Herb Green Teaching Fellow at the University of Oklahoma, Marco was the first researcher to explore the archive of Mickey Muennig at OU's Special Collections. His work has been supported by the Graham Foundation, and he holds a Bachelor of Architecture from Syracuse University and an MS from Columbia. Marco is the lead curator of Do Not Try to Remember, the American School of Architecture in the Bay Area. Welcome, Marco.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here this evening. Such a pleasure to meet you and see you all. I want to first thank some partners and some supporters. First, the AIA Center for Architecture and Design have been patient and supportive throughout this whole partnership, this exhibition, exciting programming, and tonight's event. Thank you so much. We're grateful for Hans Balduff and BCV Architecture, who spearheaded this ongoing collaboration with AIA San Francisco. Thank you. We're grateful to our incredible students, colleagues, and staff at the University of Oklahoma who have been working on the American School project since 2017. Tonight's conversation represents further investigation into this design legacy. Do Not Try to Remember, the exhibition, draws on the work of a team of curators, including Hans Balduff, Christopher Loofs, Rachel Engler, Amber Sarmiento, Angela Pearson, and Stephanie Pilot. It would not have been possible without the support of the Christopher C. Gibbs College of Architecture and Dean Hans Butzer, the Goff Chair of Creative Architecture, and OU's Vice President for Research Partnerships. To the OU Libraries team, who created the American School Archive, and who has been a steadfast partner from the start for this work, we offer our deepest gratitude. Friends, family members, and admirers of these architects have been instrumental in helping to save and preserve their legacy. For example, Katie Song saved the work of John Mars Davis. Michelle Muennig ensured the work of Mickey was preserved. Lisa Whitaker, Leila Cohen, the Friends of Kebyar, and so many others, we cannot thank you enough for preserving this legacy. We must, of course, recognize the architects of the American School, some of whom are here tonight, and the network of daring creators, clients, builders, fabricators, which make up this design community, some of whom are joining us for a panel discussion later. It is an honor and a pleasure. Finally, let us all applaud Bob and Sherry Faust for their extraordinary multi-million-dollar gift, establishing the American School Endowment and Archives, ensuring that the inspiration we celebrate tonight will continue to spark new explorations for generations to come. Thank you so much. So, the American School story begins with Bruce Goff. In the post-war American context, Goff was an outlier. Charles Jenks may have put it best when he said, quote, "Goff is so extreme that he makes the rest of the avant-garde look like a bunch of prep school conformists wearing the same school tie." This confection, a 1962 house in Mississippi, is emblematic, wouldn't you say? At a moment when architects and schools were embracing the international modernism of the Bauhaus, Goff was a renegade. Goff got a start in practice at age 12 as an apprentice in Tulsa, and by his early 20s, he was already designing major buildings. It was his experience in World War II that catalyzed a shift towards a more mature style. He enlisted in the Navy Seabees during the war, a construction battalion. He was charged with designing military structures out of available materials that could be built quickly. At the Camp Parks Navy Base in California, for example, he was challenged to design a new chapel using affordable and available materials, primarily brick, plywood, Quonset structures, and redwood. Materials were scarce during the war effort, so Goff used a Quonset hut structural system. These were typically used to quickly enclose space for barracks and warehouses. But here, the structure creates a wide and open barrel-vaulted building for this non-denominational worship space. Goff viewed the budget and labor constraints as a challenge and as a springboard for creativity. The project was designed and built quickly. It opened a year after Goff arrived on the base. The Camp Parks Chapel was praised by architects and religious leaders alike and published nationally, as you can see. Architectural Forum ran a 6-page article in December of '45, lauding the design for the, quote, imaginative but highly unorthodox solutions. Later, writing in AD, critic Lionel Marsh captured the power of Goff's invention. Quote, "The Quonset system, consisting of curved corrugated metal shell, was ubiquitous throughout the Western Hemisphere during the Second World War. The semi-cylindrical form spotted the landscape like some poxy infection. Goff takes this system, fit in the popular mind only for the scrap heap, and transforms it into a place of worship. This is a symbolic act, a religious statement profounder than all the art in Coventry." End quote. The publicity surrounding this chapel brought Goff to the attention of the faculty at the University of Oklahoma, OU, where they were searching for new leadership. Despite not having a college degree, he was hired and elected chairman of the architecture school in 1947. After he arrived, he recruited an impressive faculty, including Mendel Glickman, most well known as Frank Lloyd Wright's structural engineer, as well as Elizabeth Mock, Fay Jones, and many others. These renegades, as we've come to call them, promoted a radical approach to teaching design centered on contextualism, resourcefulness, and experimentation. This was a major departure from what other schools were doing. At the time, most architecture schools in the United States followed a curriculum inspired either by the French Beaux-Arts school or the German Bauhaus school. Here you see a typical example of a Beaux-Arts curriculum assignment. Students learned through the study and drawing of neoclassical architecture, through imitation. Of course, by the post-war era, many schools had turned instead to the Bauhaus model of architectural education. Here you see Mies van der Rohe, Bauhaus leader at IIT, where he led the school. Note one of the students' projects here. It's clearly an imitation of Mies's work. When Goff arrived, the OU School of Architecture was housed in an old barracks. Bill Haney, an OU alum, described what it was like to arrive at this strange school in the late 1940s. I quote, "Finding the School of Architecture in a former barracks north of the city, I walked into a mysterious and fascinating space. The ceiling and walls were painted flat black, and display surfaces were black Celotex insulation boards mounted on the backs of freestanding bookcases. Corners and columns were rhythmically dotted with white circular tabs used to reinforce holes punched into loose-leaf binder pages. Overhead was stretched closely spaced parallel strands of white strings. With these mundane and inane elements, a spectacular sense of space was achieved by an imagination I had not encountered before. To my right was an opening arrayed with dime store hanging beads, providing a colorful element of semi-privacy. Quietly parting the beads appeared Bruce Goff, extending a hand and warm welcome in a soft voice with a slight Oklahoma drawl. I was immediately set at ease. Once students were enrolled, they were taught to avoid imitation of any kind. The faculty at OU believed the job of the educator was to draw out the individual creativity of each student. They didn't teach a style. Students developed keen awarenesses of global architecture history, of course, but when they arrived in the design studio, they were instructed, do not try to remember. Do not begin with classical column capitals or proportional systems or modernist grids. Do not begin by intimidating the designs of your instructor. Do not arrive at the beginning with an end already in mind. Instead, begin fresh. Begin with the natural context, the slope of the land, the quality of the light, local materials. Be earnest in responding to the program. Sincerely listen to the needs and desires of the client. Most importantly, begin by trusting your own creative instincts. This, we stress, was really radical at the time. To understand just how different the OU student approach was, we can look to a 1957 publication, which includes student work from 52 architecture schools in the United States. Each school was given a 2-page spread in the book to share student work. Here is the student work from Harvard. You see white boxes of all kinds. At Virginia Tech, flat roofs and ribbon windows appear. IIT student work, again, where Mies van der Rohe led the school. Here we see Miesian boxes, broken apart into planes and lines. It does seem like a bunch of prep school conformists wearing the same school tie indeed. And then there's OU. We see otherworldly, dramatic, and organic visions, no boxes. The goal at OU was originality. Imitation was the only thing off limits. Some of these renegade architects, educated in Oklahoma, migrated to the San Francisco Bay Area after graduation. This exhibition showcases the work of these architects. I want to take a moment and share some examples of student work from OU to give a sense of how they got started. We see a John Marsh Davis student project. Here's another one for a comfort station. It's wildly creative and original work, colorful, science fiction, highbrow, lowbrow at the same time, perverse even. Mickey Muennig student projects, McDonald's preschool, and then Yole drawing, a Dick Whitaker drawing for a rec center. But is it? Our exhibition, Do Not Try to Remember, explores the work of a group of Oklahoma graduates who went west and established groundbreaking practices here. Educated in the American school approach developed by Bruce Goff and free of European dogma, these architects, often called renegades, iconoclasts, and apostates, were taught to prize originality and individual creativity. In California, they found clients and society open to their creative visions. They helped shape the communities and the built environment of the regions. Tonight, we don't just celebrate renegades like Mickey Muennig or John Marsh Davis in isolation. We will explore how this experimental body of architecture was only made possible by an expansive and daring network of clients, builders, and fabricators alike. Rather than evaluating these work through formal analysis or through an art historical lens, our panel discussion tonight centers the community members who fostered a spirit of experimentation and design within this loose cohort we've come to know as the American School of Architecture. Perfect timing. So I would like to introduce our guests. You all ready? So first, Megan Julian. Come on up. You can sit anywhere. Megan Julian practiced design alongside her husband, Alexander Julian, on fashion and home goods, including furniture, lighting, and textiles. As a client, she worked closely with John Marsh Davis on the design of her home in Ridgefield, Connecticut. We also have Jim Leno, J.G. Leno Construction. Influenced by his family's work as shipwrights for generations, he has brought this legacy of woodcraft to his practice in Point Reyes Station. As a builder and fabricator, he collaborated with John Marsh Davis on many projects. We also have Mike Higgins, Vice President of Post Ranch Inn. He's a career hospitality professional and steward of Mickey Muennig's iconic design since 1992. We have Frank Pinney, President of Pinney Construction. He's a veteran, carpenter, lumberjack, volunteer firefighter, general contractor, and builder. He worked with Mickey Muennig on over a dozen projects in Big Sur since the early 1970s. Oh, wait. I forgot I had little title slides. I'm sorry. We have Megan, Jim. We have more images later. Mike. We have Frank. And we have Dan Woods as well. Come on down. Dan's creator of things and stuff, architectural, structural, automotive designer, fabricator, and installer. He was a contributor to scores of architectural projects, including 25 by Mickey Muennig. Come on down. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm very much looking forward to having a conversation about this fascinating group of architects. I can't wait to talk about this community that has developed, this network that has developed around the love of building, right? That emerged from this belief that architecture need not replicate, but instead invent. And it's really only possible because of folks like you. So to start, I'm going to ask each of you the boring question. Briefly describe your connection to this American school and with the wider design community. Who wants to start?
Sure. Hello, Mike Higgins, Post Ranch Inn. My connection to the American School of Architecture really Mickey was my introduction to it, honestly. And then he really opened me up to the Bruce Goffs of the worlds and the Lautners. And Herb Green was a early investor and stayed at Post Ranch lots and lots of times. So that kind of opened up all that. And of course, Julia Morgan and Frank Lloyd Wright, and just Mickey just kept the conversation going, so to speak. And then we just had amazing craftsmen on property in Big Sur who were so dedicated and committed to the project that it was just, it's humbling in a lot of ways, honestly.
Thanks. Who's next? Let's go down the line. Megan?
I don't have any connection,
Yes, you do.
but I am an admirer of architects. I've always loved architecture, and we enjoyed so much working with John Marsh Davis. I grew up in Sausalito. He and my mother were really good friends. They both had great eye. And so being raised in that milieu was really important. And when we bought our property in Connecticut, Alex, there was no question. We were going to work with John.
We're going to ask more about that in a second. Thank you.
Well, my background is, right out of high school, I built a hot rod, a show car, and I won grand sweepstakes. So I got hired by a guy named Big Daddy Ed Roth. And next thing you know, I'm building hot rods for all the celebrities, John Wayne, Elvis Presley, you name it. But architectural-wise, the first house I ever worked on was for John Lautner. And I think everybody here knows who he was. And then, I was building cars and he brought me on board. And I went with, I was I.M. Pei, Norman Foster, just all these major architects. So I've been involved because of my customers, having them for their architects. And it's been a joy. And then I met Mickey when I first moved to Big Sur, and we were kind of souls, and we just got along great. And I spent 25 of his homes I got to fabricate and build. So that's my architecture.
Wait, what year did you end up in Big Sur? When did you meet Mickey?
Pardon?
What year did you meet Mickey?
90.
1990. Cool. Just
No,
wondering.
89.
89.
Sorry.
Okay, Jim.
I'm Jim Lino, and I was raised on the other side of the bay, Sausalito and Mill Valley. I connected first with the American School through the architect Violetta Autumn, also Sausalito architect in 1974. My father, who was a general contractor in Marin County, he started as a boat builder, and wooden boats kind of had gone by the way. And he was building a house designed by Violetta on Bernard Street above, if anyone might remember, the old Mill Tavern in Mill Valley was the top of Bernard Street. And I was a high school student and expected to work all summer. And I met Violetta Autumn that summer of 1974. And Violetta, a very precise woman in almost every regard, it was my introduction to what became standard hold downs in in earthquake zones. Buildings have to be seismically stable, and hold downs were a component of that. Anyhow, there was a huge rock. The site couldn't have heavy equipment. We couldn't use dynamite. And she designed a system for anchoring into the rock on one side of the hold down. And then, totally unrelated to architecture, but a favorite story of mine. It's kind of the hippie days, and Mill Valley was kind of a landing spot. And my father, I wouldn't call him conservative, but I'd call him old fashioned. And he, his company, all the carpenters were union carpenters, and they were like serious and very good at what they did. And I was working on what was called the cutoff saw, and this guy came up and I couldn't hear him. So I turned it off, and he said, "I'm looking for work. Who can I ask?" And I saw my father up there, and I thought, "Oh, this will be good." And I said, "That guy up there, his name is George." And totally unrelated. This is a good story. So
Please. We're just here to have a conversation.
he went up, and and said to my father, he said, "I'm looking for work. I'm a Finnish carpenter." My father looked right at him and said, "What the hell does that have to do with anything? I'm a Portuguese carpenter." So, so the world in those days hadn't divided yet. Like a carpenter in my father's eyes could build boats, cabinets, furniture, everything. He should be highly skilled. There was no distinction. And this man made a distinction that my father never learned to accept. So anyhow, that was Violetta Autumn. Real quickly, John Marsh Davis, that was 1979. And I actually met John Marsh Davis at your mother's house. Your then, I think, brother-in-law, Jim, was building a new kitchen for your mom, and he had to go off to dental college. And my was still at that time working for my father, and I came in and finished the kitchen and met John and was just bowled over on how involved he was and his sketches on the walls, the mock-ups that he had me making, which I had never, I mean, it was a whole like new world for me. So that was my introduction.
Had you worked with other architects like him before?
No, nor since.
Okay, we're going to talk more about that in a second. But two types of carpenters.
I'm Frank. No. I'm a 1957. I'm Frank Penny. My wife Kathy is here in the audience. She has kept me alive and out of bankruptcy for the last 53 years, and she had no idea what she was getting into, and nor did I when I came out to Big Sur. She had been a private secretary to the symbol is TalkNet, Frank. Bottom line, neither one of us had any real experience in what we've made our life out of together, this construction game. But I did have an opportunity to work in summer pay for a brick crew in Washington, D.C. area, hustling brick on a brick crew of very salty dudes. And I was the young honky turkey. Get on up here, turkey. Bring more brick up here. More brick up here. And so I decided I didn't want to go into masonry necessarily, but perhaps another part of construction after that summer. But as time passed, I finished with a degree in political science from college, a tour in the Marine Corps, and I got recruited by IBM as a computer salesman right when the new generation of integrated circuits came out and the world started to go into integrated circuits and computers for craziness. So I spent the first 8 or 10 years of my adult outside life in either military or structured corporate business. Things happened in my life. I lost a first family marriage because I didn't see how the cards were stacked. My first wife did not want to be a corporate wife, so my corporate career took a check. And I decided after she and her John Hancock actuary took off into the sunset together that I would maybe take a change of gears. I was a corporate sales manager for a corporation that had offices on the West Coast and took an opportunity to drive up coast to a Big Sur and spend a night up there in an incredible experience. It said, there's something else going on in your life. And I decided that night, left my job as a corporate officer. I'd met a lady in Chicago just recently and convinced her that I had a great plan, but she said, not right now, thank you. So I took off for the West Coast. I spent a couple of months finding Big Sur. I had wanted to be a warrior. I got a chance to serve in the Marine Corps. I also wanted to be a fireman. I also wanted to be a carpenter, and I wanted to be a lumberjack. Those were all things I wanted to do as a kid, and somehow the Marine Corps took care of one of them, but the rest of it wasn't happening. But Big Sur made it possible. One of the first people that I got to meet at all, well, actually the first people as a group were a group that were building a Mickey house on Pfeiffer Ridge out of a wine tank, a 2-story tall redwood wine tank soaked in a burgundy of some kind over decades that had been repurposed as a house. And it was organized in such a way that it was in incredible shape, an incredible degree of workmanship, and the IBM and the Big Sur folks that were doing the work just drew me in, and I got a chance to at least taste it. But I had no skills to speak of other than a desire. So years later, having been in Big Sur for a couple of decades, I developed a connection to construction. Spent my time as a carpenter, spent my time supervising some jobs, and got my contractor's license, and stayed connected to Mickey indirectly through social and just being in Big Sur. Community is literally 1,500 people spread over 60 miles. So everyone's a neighbor. And the year 1988, I think it was, Mickey was engaged, or the group was engaged, putting the post ranch together. And I got to talk with Mickey about it. The contractor I was working with was looking for work, and I said, well, how about maybe Chris could do that? So I set up a plan to do the pre-construction for Post Ranch with this contractor, and we submitted our plans and our timelines and our Gantt charts, and we doubled down on how we were making the numbers up and submitted them, and Chris got the contract. And then he turned around to me and said, you know, Frank, I was going to have you build this, but you've gotten to know the owners too well. So I don't think I want you to do this one for me. I'm going to have Brian do it, but maybe you can get the next one. So I missed my chance, but it was my numbers that got the job. And obviously they got the job done because the ranch has been a tremendous success, and I've been associated with it ever since. Since then, I've done 5 Mickey houses from the ground up, and another 6 remodels, refurbishes, and got a chance to work with Mickey closely on a number of levels, and it was a great experience. But that's my association with the American School, Mickey Muennig. Others, I'm sure, have been in that, but I don't know who they are. I only know Mickey. Mickey was the one. So we're open to the next level here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now that we all know each other, I'm going to ask one or two, I think, hopefully fascinating questions. And I'd like to start with you, Megan. As you see from the work outside and from the only dogma that might exist, right? Do not copy, do not replicate, invent, right? There's not a lot aesthetically that connects the American school, but there's a lot philosophically, right? So one of that commonalities shared between these architects is a commitment to developing strong relationships with clients. What was it like working with John Marsh Davis, and how would you describe your collaboration?
Well, as I said before, I had known John for years. John and we spent 5 years on paper. And we have about 6 or 7 different permutations of what, and this is what we ended up with. One of the first, that's the property, which John drew all of these by hand. So he was an amazing, you would get this box or an envelope and you would open it up and it would be so magic because everything had been, this was before CAD. So I still have all of these things and I kept them. But John, as I said, we spent 5 years. There are 6 or 7 different permutations. And I have one that I framed most of the really important ones. And on one of them, because Alex had said, let me see what you can do with something like a pavilion style, Gary-esque. I have that. If I ever wanted to build something else, I would build that. It was the way it was stacked, being able to see over the roofs. There's a Post-it note that says, plans are involved, but are pretty easy. Building is really, really hard work. So that is really the way that we approached this collaboration, because Alex is in the design field textiles, color. And we were able to work with John. He would come out every once in a while, twice a year. We knew his sister and her beautiful kitchen. I mean, I had known the Stinson Beach house for years. I knew John's house. I knew the Barber house and Inverness when he was still building that, when he was first beginning, and he had a sink outside. We'd go for lunch, and he was a brilliant landscape architect.
Mhm.
He was as good at that as he was at
Mhm.
the building.
Mhm.
And we would have lunch. He'd put all the dishes in the sink, fill it for the hose, put some dishwasher soap in and say, I'll come back and take care of it next week. I mean, he was so creative. I would get a package like every couple of months and be just like Christmas, opening it up. And oh, this is one idea for a staircase. He would send me pictures of an idea he had done for his cousin's house in Piedmont.
Mm.
He would send me drawings of another client's something. So it was very collaborative.
Mhm.
He was not practical. I will just say that. And his idea of a kitchen does not work. So when it came down to designing the house, I told him exactly what we needed to do. We needed a kitchen that actually worked. So a wonderful, wonderful.
What other
kitchen.
kinds of conversations did you have? What was driving some of your decisions? How did, yours and your husband's love of color play into this? I'd love to hear more.
We were talking about this today. One of the first things, because I had seen a picture of a house that John had sent me when he was working on the Lobos property, on the Lopez Island property, there was a picture of a house and our house had very, very deep soffits. And this one had a reflective paint. It was a high gloss, so you could see the dappling of the sea in Lopez up under the soffits. And our friends Tom and Judy Holland, Tom is a painter in Berkeley, California. They have a wonderful, wonderful place up in the hills there. I think it was a barn. I'm not sure if it was a Willis Polk property, but it was a barn, and it had deep soffits, and they had a pool, and they had a dark, dark paint under the soffit, and it would reflect the light from the water. And we were on a pond, 2 ponds, and so with those deep soffits, I said, let's do something dark, really wonderful, shiny, reflective, and I picked teal because Alex invented the color teal, according to our children. But a really, really dark, dark, dark tealy green. And then the rest just went from there. Alex said, well, I'm not sure we should talk to John because maybe, and John said, because we were at Stinson Beach working with Don Kaufman, and Don did the paints with us. So, and Alex and Don are both colorists. And Alex said, let me just check with John. And he said, we're sitting here and we're working on colors for the house. Do you think, do you see the house with color? And he said, you're Alexander Julian, you can do whatever the hell you want. So we did the house with 54 colors, and Don Kaufman was a part of that process. So Don and Alex have had plenty of wine in Italy and, like Como and 56. But so they would sit there together and they would describe the color of a foil off the cap of a bottle of wine that they had drunk in, I don't know, Lake Como or something. And then Don would say, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. So we had all the paints designed. We put them in the house. There were rooms that were 4 colors, our bedroom was 4 colors, one on each wall, but very, very, you could hardly tell. People did not notice when they walked in because it was almost like the inside of a shell, an abalone or something. So we played with a lot of that. John, the living room was, so tall and wonderful. And we did it all in mahogany. And it's what's called measure 4 times, cut once. because you cannot screw around with that.
Mhm.
But it was magnificent, and everything, the scale of the house was perfect. The kitchen, everything was put 2 inches, 2.5 inches higher in the kitchen, all the counters, because I'm tall. So we did that.
Hmm.
And the fun part is that Sam Cousins, who I grew up with in Sausalito, whose mother and father, Dorothy and Ivan Cousins, Sam was an architect, went to Cooper Hewitt, ended up being a master cabinet maker, and he did the kitchens. He's Julia Child's grandson, a nephew. So it was fun. It was a whole group that got along so well.
Yeah, please do.
One of my most poignant memories in this FedEx 5 years, because we didn't have emails and stuff, and Megan opened this one FedEx envelope and took out this black and white drawing, which we still have from John, and she said, John Marsh, calling him on the phone, she said, John Marsh Davis, if you think I'm going to run 160 feet to see why a child is crying, you're out of your fucking mind. And the hallway is suddenly clear.
That was the first. That was the first.
The early scheme, yeah. So this back and forth, right, between fastidiousness and practicality was perhaps one of the roots of this collaboration, you'd say?
And when you were talking about working with John, with the drawings on the walls, it's not a joke. So we had these masons, the Pilato brothers, and Salvatore Pilato pretended he could not speak English. So John was out where the covered porch is to the far right there. And there was a drafting table, and he picked up a plan and he turned it over, and he's going along with his pencil, and he's sketching out where he's turning the chimneys. And all of a sudden, Sal Pilato started to lighten up, and then all of a sudden his English became incredible. It was just like, he was so happy to have somebody just right there. Let's just sketch this and do this right here.
Mm-hmm.
It was great.
So speaking of, how buildings come together and the value of working with an architect who is passionate about that, Jim, I want to ask you, describe the significance and origin of this wood expressionism, as Baldock describes it, emblematic of yours and Marsh Davis's work. Speculate on the significance of craft and materiality, specifically in your collaboration with him.
Okay. Well, I want to start with the sink that John threw all the dishes into.
Don't forget your microphone. We have some folks online who can't hear you. Thank you.
Does that work?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. I'm going to start with the sink in Inverness. So I built that cabin. My wife, Catherine, is here, and we spent many weekends in the cabin in John's garden in Inverness. So the question's a good one. You talked about mahogany on the cabinets in your house. John, in 1988, I saw the date 1988 on your drawings. I saw your house being designed. He was designing a house for my wife, Catherine, and me in 1988. And he designed an incredible house. It was 2 buildings mirroring each other, separated by 70 feet. And in that 70 feet, oh, okay, this makes it a little better, was a bridge. And the bridge was going to be the maid bedroom. This is getting to kind of the interface materials and stuff, but it's complicated in the coastal zone of California and getting something approved. I went to the planners, and I had acted as planner for several projects, as project planner for John. including my own. And I learned from the planners that my chances of having this approved to build inside of 3 years were really pretty slim. They didn't like disconnected foundations. So buildings that connected, but the foundation didn't. We went to John and said that we weren't going to build that building. So this building here wasn't built. And John was really upset. And I understood later why, because he had really nailed the design for our life, but we couldn't see it. And it may have been worth the 3 years of planning approval to get it approved. And he didn't talk to me for at least 2 months, I think. And we were building the Jane Mueller Belvedere house at the time. So not having communication with the architect like John, and you know how interactive that process is, was a challenge and involved a lot of sleepless nights for me. So getting to the materials, he designed a house for us. Initially, he took this drawing in the original tracing form and snipped it in two and pasted them together. That was an expression of, here's what you get now. And then he kind of dug in and designed this beautiful home. After which I came to him and said, you know, that's a beautiful home. I'm getting it approved in planning, but we can't build that right now. We don't have the means, the money to build that. Can you draw a smaller home for us? Which he did. So he designed our little house. And then we built that, and I went to him and I said, you know, I need my wood shop. And he pulled not the tracings, they had been cut up, but the prints of the tracings out, and said, this is what I had done for you in the first place. Because it was the shop on one end and house on the other. Anyhow, the house that he designed for us was the first time that I had experienced the design process right from the beginning as a client. I had been involved early on as planner, making sure he was incorporating everything that had to be on the drawings to move him through the California Coastal Commission. But this was different. He was designing our house, and he probably on your site, like, he would stand in a spot for a long time. You know, he might move his head a little bit, and he was just absorbing. I'd seen him do this on other projects. So he designed this great house for us. You come in the entry, it's a very low ceiling thing, and then it opens up into this beautiful great room with handsome trusses that are all of the roof framing, the exposed framing in our house is Douglas fir, local conifer. Most readily wood available in the Pacific Northwest is Douglas fir, and the trusses are really handsome. And I had a thing for the work of Charles Rennie McIntosh, and he brought his work into the trusses of my house, a variation on them, and so we have you know, high frame cathedral ceiling and tall doors and windows. The doors, in terms of just the materials, the doors are all redwood glass. The interior trim and exterior trim of the house is all redwood. This was when it was still available, fairly readily available, and in old growth form. I had my brother and I had bought a bridge, redwood bridge from Humboldt County that built a lot of the house. All the doors, all virtually all the interior trim except some figured redwood that I lucked into were from that bridge. And the casework, all the standing and running trim were redwood. And this is vertical grain, old growth, beautiful redwood. The casework is all redwood. You mentioned mahogany on your house. So mahogany and redwood go together really well. Your mother's cabinets were all mahogany cabinets. Yeah. Honduras mahogany, the mahogany.
We didn't use Honduras, we used something else that was at that time more ecologically.
Yeah.
But the outside doors, the inside doors, everything was mahogany. And again, the doors were really tall. So it was 11 feet downstairs. So the doors were up at 10. All the doors to the outside were from the floor to the ceiling, the French doors, and all the handles were up where if you have small children, they can't get out.
Are those doors all still working
They're
nicely?
still working.
That's great.
They were
That's
all
great.
custom made. It was.
Yeah.
No callback.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that you
it-
brought up Macintosh, though, because so much of what makes Marsh Davis's work emblematic, I think, is this fascination with joinery, right? With not wood as a material, but wood as a craft, as a tradition, even. And when you compare it to perhaps his teacher, Goff, right, in some ways looks nearly traditional, right? Of course it isn't. It's downright daring, the stuff that he's doing with wood. And I'd love to hear more about that too.
Well, we butt heads a bit, a lot actually, because John wanted instant gratification. Like he would draw a table, a very handsome table, and it would have all kinds of parts in it, and I would look at it and think of how I could build it so it would be full of handsome wood joints and wouldn't require any metal fasteners or glue or anything. And he just wanted the table that he drew built. And he won some of the time, and some of the time I won. And there are still both types of tables floating around, but he was really good at drawing a table that is built using real traditional, mortise and tenon joinery where it will stand the test of time without any fasteners. And he was also very good at, a lot of the houses that we built furniture for the houses in John style almost entirely. And the main, if it was furniture, it was probably mahogany, and it would have been Honduras in the early years, and then later it would have been Sapele or Sipo or some mahogany type lumber coming from Africa. But the redwood blended so well with those woods. Like we did houses all trimmed in redwood, doors and windows all redwood, all the casework mahogany, and if you didn't know woods, you would think it was all the same.
I want to move on to a different type of collaboration. Mike, I would love if you could describe a little bit your team's collaboration with Muennig in the design of Post Ranch. How does its design contribute to a unique experience for your guests? Oops.
Thank you.
I forgot I had all these, I'm sorry.
Sure. So this just gives you a little sense of pace of Post Ranch, where we're sitting 1,200 feet above the Pacific Ocean in Big Sur, and just an amazing South Coast view here. So one is just incredible sense of place, right? And then we have 4 different style rooms that Mickey created. So these are 3 of the earth shelters or ocean houses. We're fortunate enough that we're talking about one-off buildings. This is a great picture of Mickey where we talk about the architects taking in the moment and taking in the space. Mickey actually slept on sites where some of the rooms will be built. So he's standing on top of Sierra Mar Restaurant in this slide, and in the next one, you'll see what it becomes. And in Mickey's mind, he was replicating the way the mountains are cascading into the sea with how Sierra Mar is cascading down, which is the name of our restaurant. So some beautiful interiors, just Pacific meets inside. Just every corner, every turn, there's just some new incredible design function an idea. These, so another look at our earth shelter. These are his very original designs. So getting to how we interacted with Mickey, our managing director and really visionary of Post Ranch, and Mike Freed, met with Mickey and said, "Look, design me a tree house." This was his criteria for for selecting an architect, and he got together with Mickey and gave Mickey $5,000 in 3 months and said, "Create a tree house." And we'll come up to the tree houses. So he passed the test with his tree houses, and he got to design the original 30 units of Post Ranch. These are our earth shelters or ocean houses here. Lots of beautiful redwood there. This is a coast house, really designed to kind of mirror the redwood trees around it and the trunks of the redwood trees. Sits right on the edge of the cliff, also cantilevering outside decks. Beautiful entrance. There's Dan's metalwork right there. Just extensive throughout the property, and 33 years old, and they have another 90 years in them, I think, honestly. Another beautiful look at the coast houses, cylindrical buildings. There's 10 of those in all. There's an interior of them, all redwood paneling inside, wood burning fireplaces. So really create very, very unique experiences for guests. Guests tend to love the room type they stay in. They'll return to the same rooms. Some wander about tree houses and ocean houses and coast houses, but we find them that they love them. There's the tree house, a bunch of different things that they're sitting 9 feet off on stilts off the ground, protecting the redwood roots and trees around them as well, and just give people that adult camp feel, right? And this
But
is
the
in
treehouse
92.
came from your team.
Well, it's Mike Freed's idea to have Mickey design it. So, and it was how he judged if Mickey was going to be the architect for the project or not, was by the treehouse.
And there was a lot of design build going on. Mickey's original drawings, there's ramps going up to the tree houses. I got involved and we decided we needed stairs.
There you
People
go.
would be a
Yep.
lot more comfortable.
And that
then they
round
made 'em.
building never happened in the tree houses, but ended up happening in the restaurant. I mean, the round window there.
Mhm.
So those design elements kind of moved about the ranch a bit.
Tell us a little bit more about this back and forth that you had with Mickey. I think what's so fascinating about Post Ranch is that it, in some ways, exemplifies his whole practice, because each one of these radically different units represents a different way to respond to the landscape. It produces different effects, right? It's almost like a taxonomy of different Muennig ideas
Absolutely.
in one place,
Yeah.
right? Like how much of that came from the site, challenging as it was? How much of that came from, your team's insistence on a unique experience? Tell us more.
I think they all kind of blended in seamlessly almost. I mean, one is, you weren't going to overpower Big Sur in any way. So you had to be unique within it. So Treehouse is probably the best example of that.
And he
Ocean
spent so
House
much
is-
time there. He was so involved. And we have a building we nicknamed the Butterfly Building. It's because he saw some butterflies. So he made a building.
Yeah.
It's right in the middle of the project.
Yeah. And then
This day,
Ocean,
it's the Butterfly Building.
and the ocean houses will create a whole different experience for the guests and a whole different feel to the sense of place of sitting right on the ocean, 1,200 feet above. And each one of the rooms is really, the Post Ranch is designed for a 2-night lovers getaway, really. And it's been that way since 93, and it continues to be that way. And it's just really, we just watch how our guests interact with the property. We check them in, we orientate them lightly, and they find their way around the property. And we just see them relaxing and just melting off. And by day 2, they want to book for 2 more nights. Interior of a tree house. So ultimately, I mean, this is where all these craftsmen came in, where the Dans and the Franks and Bill McLeods, and just amazing collaboration with Mickey. One of our main concrete guy, Butch Conlon, just passed away. He probably poured miles of board-free concrete at Post Ranch, and he left an amazing little archive. And within that, the treasure was literally a cocktail napkin pencil sketch of Mickey giving it to Butch at the end of a workday in the local Fernwood bar, the local dive bar, probably the equivalent of the Western in Point Reyes. And he held it for all these years. 35 years later, here's this pencil sketch napkin drawing, right, of saying, here's the design you're going to do. And and Dan could speak to that much more.
One of the
way
most
they
important
work
things you have to
together.
understand with Mickey was this was built on a seriously low budget. So everything involved was about saving money, doing the best we could with what we had. Yeah. And we pulled it off.
30 rooms, 40 staff housing units in 10 buildings, a reception lodge, and a 5,000 square foot restaurant. In 1993, $10 million. They came in $800 over budget.
It's
Amazing.
We
unbelievable.
were all very proud of that. The things you have no clue. It's just, he'd go, well, Dan, I got this tubing, very cheap. He goes, let's make the lights out of them. So all the lights on that walkways are 33 years old, and it was just because I found some really reasonable heavy pipe.
Still there today. Please.
Please, yeah.
They're opening the house with the clothes with West Branch Inn. And Mickey's genius to me was not just his architecture, but his care for the environment and the fact that you didn't see anything from Highway 1 until you got into the property. But there, it was like magic land with all this incredible detail and brilliant architecture and details that were there, but they were invisible to the outside because it protected the nature and the honesty of Big Sur. Always thinking. Continues to this day, and then to the point of community, where Post Ranch is 6th generation Post family, homesteaded the land, Spanish land grant. So then 4 generations in, Bill Post is well into his 70s when he meets Mike Freed, who's 30 years his junior. They have this 10-year vision, create Post Ranch, and now we have the 6th generation Post family working within the organization. We have 100 people living on property, 70 staff members with their family members, thriving. We have 2nd generation adults who are working alongside their parents. They were born and raised on property and now live and work there. It's just
We've become one
mind-boggling.
big giant family.
Yeah,
That's
Mike,
simple.
Mike, can you bring up this comment that Mike highly qualified? How highly qualified all of the people were, the financial
Thank you.
people, the architect, in
Yeah.
hospitality. These are great experts in hospitality, and they, go ahead and tell how that
Yes.
worked out.
So Mike Freed was a real estate lawyer from San Francisco. When he got the brilliant idea he went down to foreclose original Ventana as the real estate lawyer, and he got this brilliant idea. He met Bill Post, who held a note on part of the property. Post held on to the most unique 100 acres where Post Ranch sits now. So Freed has no hotel experience. Post has no hotel experience. Mickey never designed a hotel. And Frank probably never worked on one. Bill
Yeah.
McLeod never did.
Yeah.
So just in a wild renegade town of Big Sur area, Mickey fit right in and was, just our Yoda elfin leader in the design of it all.
And all the doors in the hotel came out of a school, repurposed back way before all this ecology became popular.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Core 10
Yeah,
still
yeah.
50-year-old Core 10
And
still there.
recycled railroad ties too, right? Is that right?
Oh,
For
yeah,
some, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So while we're talking about Muennig and Big Sur, Frank and Dan, I sort of have the same question. And I would just love you to talk about a project you worked on with Muennig, which sort of exemplifies the nature of your collaboration, the design culture and community of Big Sur, right? And how craft, detail, material that you worked on really drove these designs. I have some images of the Pavey residence just as a way to get started, but feel free to talk about anything you worked on together with him.
Do you have the pictures that Dan did of the Barclays barn?
I don't, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
have any
my,
images
that's
of
my
Barclay
fault. I
Barn.
apologize for that because that was a unique experience. If you haven't seen it, Barclays barn was basically Mickey's answer to being able to build a barn for a client when the Coastal Commission and Monterey County planning people would never have accepted this concept of a music studio. It turned out that Barclays barn had all the necessary bays in the board form concrete below the structure, but above the structure is pure Mickey. Curved roof, recycled wood, using hardware from the Greens hardware to be able to bolt recycled wood to cable to give it the serene curved roof look that you see at what you call it, Airport in Washington. Yeah, whatever the big
Dulles.
Dulles, yeah, Dulles. Yeah, and when we finished the project, the guys were all really, really hot for the idea of taking the idea and going out to the Midwest and showing farmers how to build their barns, because this was the barn of the future as far as we were concerned. But every bit of it, and it turned out that not only was it an incredibly beautiful result, but it was incredibly functional. Mickey, in his infinite wisdom, and Barclay, with his knowledge of music, which is his sideline as an individual in the community, was loving music. They put together a system in the building itself. The Bose came in as a sound company and worked there for a couple of years, developing things that were learned from what Mickey did with the phonics in that building. It was incredible. And one of the looks that we got used to was all of the building flat work and structure, the girders and the beams and whatnot, the I-beams, all had these holes cut in them. The railings and the posts and so where all these holes come from? Somebody mentioned earlier tonight, well, I thought that may have come from Mickey's interest in his background in airport engineering.
Aeronautics.
Yeah, whatever. But it turns out, Dan will tell you that.
As a car builder, a hot rodder, we like to save weight. So when I got with Mickey and we had an immediate like of each other and trust, and we call them lightning holes. And everything at the Post Ranch has got holes in it. And from the moment I got involved with him, we put holes in everything. And he just loved it because it became organic as far as he was concerned. So that's how the whole thing happened. And Barclay's barn, just an interest note, his neighbor is Al Jardine. Al Jardine is a Beach Boy. Al Jardine needs a music area. Barclay is just a guy in Big Sur that likes to play on bongo drums. So but he had the money, so he decided he had to have a music studio. So that's how it all came about, and we all got a big kick out of it.
Some beautiful music came out of it, and also Barclay, as an individual in the community, donated concerts that he funded there to support Big Sur Fire and other non-GOs in the Big Sur area that support the community. So Mickey's integral to all of that insofar as his contribution of art and his contribution of his nature. Working with Mickey for me was an exchange of energy, which helped me find myself in this art that it appealed to me way back in my early years, and reached out in the construction side of architecture. I was not necessarily going to make it as an architect. My grandfather was a naval architect, among other skills, back in the day, and that was not passed down to me as a final solution. But being able to actually build, but with Mickey, you're not just looking at a recipe. You're looking at a dream. You're looking at a vision. You're looking at, by the way, his original drawings always had a little bit of tremor to the draw, so you knew always it was hand drawn by Mickey. That sense of organics somehow resonated, and we don't have a labor pool in Big Sur of people. We don't even have a labor puddle. We have kind of a wet spot. But the people of Big Sur that have settled there, that have these skills, made up the core of what we were able to do with Mickey's work. And it drew others. We now have a lot of folks from town that have either gravitated to it or whatever, but some beautiful things have been done. And Dan knows about, I think, 24 or 25 of them that he's worked on. And we've worked on 6 or 8 new ones and quite a bit of remodel. All of it based on Mickey's intense use of the Big Sur environment. One more final point I want to say. I don't know if it addresses your question, but you're going to get it anyway. Yes, Mickey did pick all the spots at the Post Ranch. He slept up on the ground there. He looked around. He studied the trees. He studied the view. All of that was done on a macro level, and it shows. It tells in the way the place vibrates when you're there. With the Cooper House, we call it the Cooper House, the Pavey house. He set that house by spending several nights out on the point, Cooper Point. And when he finished with it and we got the house completely lined out, you can sit in the master bed with your head against the backboard and look to your right. 50 miles down the coast, you can see the Beatrice Blancas Lighthouse. You can turn full to your left and you can see Point Sur Lighthouse. That's the only place in the world that you can see those 2 lighthouses at the same time from one spot. There it is. Yeah, he made that place really, really work, and that was his way. He made it happen, and he caught the fever and worked with him on that basis.
So in that shower, that outdoor shower, the little round hole, that looks right at the Big Sur Lighthouse. I mean, he planned all this, we're looking at drawings, we had no idea what he was doing. But when we got it done, and go, wait a minute, you're taking this shower, you can look right at the lighthouse. These are the details that Mickey never missed. God bless him.
So in the spirit of thinking about community and collaboration and this diverse network of builders and creators and clients, I want to hear from you all. Let's have some questions from the audience. I will run the mic so we can all hear. Does anyone have any questions for our panel to get some conversation going?
I'd love to hear more about the aspect of getting the Post Ranch Inn going, because I lived here in California during the early 90s, which was one of the most bleak time periods financially that I think anybody of all of us have ever experienced, right? Was terrible. And here you went ahead with this. That's kind of incredible. I just would like to hear more about that.
It probably just speaks to what Frank led to me to earlier, was nobody had any experience in any of it. So it was just renegade, throw it at the wall and see what stuck and see what happened. And that's what happened. But what Mike Freed and his brilliance did is there was all kinds of entitlement issues on Post property, and he cleared all these different issues with the county and set the path to be able to develop, and then everything just kind of fall in place. It was just one of these things that was meant to be, honestly. And it's just, you talk about how we all fell onto it and fell into it and created the community that it is. And what Frank's too humble to tell you is he got to his firefighting goals, and he actually became the fire chief of Big Sur, still fire chief emeritus in my opinion, but really mayor of Big Sur, this gentleman right here. So thank you for your community leadership and care and building everything that it is.
During the construction, we all just immediately, once it started and came out of the ground, we knew we were doing something special, and that meant the world to everybody there that was working. And it was just a tight-knit family, and Billy Post himself was involved with the tractors, and it was just a really great experience in our lives, and we're proud of it. At the most 20. Mark Sullivan is his grandson? Go ahead.
Mark Sullivan's an adopted son of Billy Post's sister, and he's a master craftsman. He did all the hardwood, which ours was Babinga.
Every bit of wood in that place, as far as cabinets and bed, everything is the bar, everything. more of a family.
Any other questions?
I think it was the first new, I think it was the first new hotel or multi-unit thing like that in Big Sur in like 30 years or something.
Since Ventana across the street, yeah, the better part of 20, correct.
I think the reason, what I was told, the reason that it got there, the reason that it happened was because of Mickey Muennig and the fact that he understood Big Sur and he was a resident of Big Sur and he created something so beautiful, so magnificent that was hidden inside Big Sur.
Huge part of it, absolutely. And you know, the world wasn't quite as divisive as it is now. And what Post family did was able to capitalize on their 4 generations before that of being kind of humble community leaders or neighbors. And when they went to the planning boards, neighbors stood up and said, yes, 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 support it, we support it. To this day, there's people who still come to Post Ranch and tell stories about Mary letting them pick chanterelle mushrooms at the ranch. And can we come and just do that? And we say, please.
And how they named, can you mention how they named all the rooms after the
Yeah,
pioneers?
so of the 30 original rooms, every one of them's named after Big Sur natives, locals, settlers, homesteaders, Burns, the Brazils, the Coopers, the Diaz, the Castros, the Whalens, the Trotters, and 5 post rooms as well. So, and every room has a bio and tells about their homesteading experience and post connection to the properties and neighbors.
I might interject. We were discussing this in the last few weeks. Mickey Muennig never had any fear about what he was doing. He would just do it because he never worried about money. He was a hippie and he lived in a little, you know, if you've ever seen where he lived, and it just didn't matter if he had more customers or not. He was going to do it the way he wanted it. And if people didn't like it, so be it. And we got along really well about that. And I would never forget the Paul Witt's house. They came from Beverly Hills and building this huge home off the grid. It was the biggest one in America at the time. And the master bedroom, because Mickey's so used to small, was at the top of the place and had the nicest view in the Big Sur area. And Paul Witt came in and I walked him, I go, Paul, you need to see this. So I took a tape measure and showed him where the bed ended, and it was 18 inches to the glass wall. And he says, I can't have that. And I told Mickey said, well, it was big enough to sleep in. So we had to move the wall out 4 feet. But Mickey, being Mickey, it wasn't a mistake. He just, that's what he did. And he was happy.
Say the same thing about John, was that for him, he had no interest in being well-known or lauded. It was really just about the work. It was about the design. I mean, I would say in a nutshell, for John, the journey was more important than the destination.
Wow.
And Mickey was
Fascinating.
always, and I didn't mean name drop like I told you at the beginning. I worked for Frank Gehry, Bolin Swincy Jackson. It just goes on and on. And Mickey is my favorite architect. Of all these people that I worked for all these years, his work, his ethic, and how he did things was just the best.
One of the things that people say about Mickey who knew him well or met him casually was that he was like an elf. And he was in many ways elf-like. It kind of implies a slight passiveness. Mickey had zero passiveness, but he had an incredible strength that rose from his belief, as Dan points out, in the design and the art are what are the crucial factor. The rest of it is all going to work out. And when I finally came up with my conclusion was that he's actually more like a leprechaun. He's got the spirit, though there were lots of stories about his being bullheaded. I found oftentimes that he would concede and work with all of us that were doing the work to help us help him, rather than getting pushed around by the subs or the craftsmen or the whatever. He listened, and if he saw it worked with the art, he was there for it, and we all figured out how to do it. And it was always a collaborative piece, and he never, ever, I saw him take away from somebody else's solution. He simply just blended it in, and we all got credit for the solutions. Dan is a living example of that. He's the natural engineer with a minimal amount of engineering training. He's been able to come up with solutions to do Mickey's things that I tell him about the fireplace in the restaurant.
So he drew this really, it's like a parachute, but it had faceted sides, and he has to have it, and we got no budget. So I'm working in a Quonset hut down the hill, and there's 3 redwood trees there. So I look at them, I go, I can make this work. So I stuck the metal in the trees, put a come along, and then I drove a stake down where the first one bent, and bent 5 more and welded it together, and that's the fireplace to this day. And Mickey just loved every bit of it, because, you know, he just wanted to see it done. That's what we were there to get it done.
He did the metal up, and the redwood trees became the fulcrum. So, yeah.
So poetic, actually. The redwoods become the fulcrum. We have time for one more question. Yeah, I'm going to run over here.
You never knew if Mickey was going to be hitchhiking or not either. He was always just, he was part of Big Sur. You'd be driving along, there's Mickey, thumb out.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for your time and sharing these stories. It's been great. I was curious, was there a moment when he embraced concrete more? Because if you look at, like, you know, the tree houses, obviously that's relating to the redwoods and whatnot, and the concrete really kind of stands out. Did he just explore that material because he realized its elasticity, or I'm just kind of curious if you have any background?
That's a hell of a good question, because we all of the places we did for Mickey were based on board form and the quality of board form. Initially, the quality of the board form was not as great as was the fact of it being board form. And then eventually people began to get a little bit more esoteric in how the board forming was done and the selection of the quality of the wood forms. And but the bottom line is that Mickey relied on that in such a way that the right people showed up. And Dan mentioned Butch Cronlund, who passed away not too long ago. Butch brought that capacity to do board forming and became part of the Mickey's ability to continue to project that outwards, because the places that I picked up from the work that was done in the 80s and late 80s and into the 90s, we had a dirge of work all the way through the middle 90s that involved board form, just like the work at Post Ranch. Yeah. So we pushed that whole picture that Mickey took, carried forward to wherever it's gotten to now. But the idea that it had to be super, super refined didn't start there at all. It started with just good, solid work and moved on from there. But Mickey used it beautifully in many, many ways.
Absolutely. This is a great picture to talk about. This is what Mickey did amazingly, and it happens all over this building, happens all over Post, is concrete, mainly board form, meets glass, meets steel, meets wood, and every one of them are right there. And it just repeats and repeats and repeats. And I don't think either one's more prevalent than the others, but certain buildings it is. In CRMR, it's 90% glass.
Yeah, when we talked about what we did in our little crew, we had a crew of artisans and subs that we worked with, that basically made all these things happen for us. It was always concrete, glass, stone and wood, stone and concrete, glass and wood. It was that was it. Metal structure, and then metal. Everything else, just those 5 elements made it up, and how we stuck them together on paper was what we figured out how to do in the field.
Mickey's personal house is under the ground. And, you know, we were worried right from the get-go about having a house underground and not leaking, but we pulled it off. And then he insisted I make this skylight, and we had to worry about the deer walking, because this is just, you've seen pictures. There's just a smokestack sticking out in my glass skylight. And we, you know, trying to talk to the company that's bending this glass for me back when they didn't bend that much glass, that I need it strong enough to have deer walk on it. They look at you like you're some kind of nut.
We have some
That's
great
what we did.
images of the
Th-
Munich
this house on
residents
the
in the
screen-
exhibition over here.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say, this along that line, this house on the screen has a central skylight. And the owners in the mornings have oftentimes seen a coyote looking down at them in their bed.
Well, on that note, I hate to end, but we'll have plenty of time in the reception for further conversation. Please help me thank our panel. Thank you so much. Feel free to return to your seats, and I'm just going to invite my colleague for some last remarks. Thank you again so much. Okay, so to conclude, I would like to invite Dean Butzer for some last closing remarks. Let's see. Hans E. Butzer, FAIA, is Dean of Gibbs College of Architecture. He's an award-winning architect and educator and co-founder of Butzer Architects and Urbanism. He is best known for his role in the design of key public sites in Oklahoma City, his civic engagement and advocacy, and his role as a leader at OU. Please come on up.
Well, a great big thank you to all of you for making time this evening to join us and help us celebrate what is a remarkable journey and to celebrate the work of so many of you in this room, honoring the intent of inspired individuals, clients, architects, and builders. I'm architect Hans Butzer, Dean of the Christopher C. Gibbs College of Architecture at the University of Oklahoma, home of the American School of Architecture. Tonight, I offer closing reflections on my time as a member of the faculty who has been helping develop the so-called American School project for more than 25 years. But first, I want to take time to recognize the following individuals for their dedication to the Do Not Try to Remember exhibition. A heartfelt thanks goes to architect, scholar, author, and now friend of Gibbs College, the other Hans in the room, Hans Baldauf. Thank you, Hans. So many of our new Bay Area relationships began with Hans. So again, we really are truly grateful. And then, of course, Marco Piscitelli. What an amazing exhibition. Congratulations. And also, well done with moderating and a remarkable panel. And thanks to all of your work and the larger so-called Outre West curatorial team. Our panelists, of course, Megan, Julian, Jim, Mike, Frank, and Dan. Excellent work. Without special collaborators, including clients and contractors, the work seen on the walls outside this room would not have been possible. And if you need proof of just how resonant this work has been, check out last week's glowing review of the exhibition in the LA Times, with some excellent quotes from Marco, by the way. Our path to San Francisco tonight marks another milestone in our work at Gibbs College. You could say the spark of what became the American School Project was lit 25 years ago when a national review team came to evaluate our architecture program. Their job was to decide if we met the standards to keep our professional accreditation. And in their report, they challenged us for not making better use of a special endowed position, the Bruce Goff Chair of Creative Architecture, and for not doing more to carry forward the groundbreaking ideas of Goff, Herb Green, and countless others. What began as that critique became the first ripple in what has now grown into the wave we call the American School Project. Over the next 12 years, our lecture series brought international architects, landscape architects, artists, and other creatives to Norman. As chair, I ensured that its guiding light and spirit came from Goff on Goff, in which Philip Welch, a former Goff student, recorded Goff's belief that his work should never be copied. Only his ideas about materials, space, and creativity used as a springboard. We preach no dogmas, Goff and Herb Green insisted, a principle that still shapes our work today. Around 2009, I visited the Chicago Art Institute, home to most of Goff's papers, and discovered his warnings about computeritis. Think about that, computeritis. You know where that's going. He was dismissive in his later years with the rise of computer-aided drafting and design, that these were no substitute for the brain-powered inspiration that pushed a pencil or pen. Little did he know what was in store. Fast forward to 2018. Michael Hoffner, Luca Guido, and I co-taught a special topics seminar in preparation for the OU Gibbs College's submission to the 2018 Venice Architecture Biennale. Students explored writings and interviews with Bruce Goff, and there, innocently camouflaged amongst the text of the 1981 A+U issue, curated by none other than Donald McDonald, we discovered a deceptively complex directive from Goff. Do not try to remember. What did it mean to an individual like Goff, who cared deeply about architectural history and taught it no less, to implore his students not to remember the built histories of peoples and cultures across the globe and over time? The architect must start afresh when designing for the day's unique challenges. An important outcome of the American School Project's efforts is that the work of these and other individuals can be described as contextual, resourceful, and experimental. Today, these are assumed to underpin any design worth building. Place-based, community or user-inspired, fresh ways to think of architectural space. Almost no one taught these in school in 1947, and as we saw in Marco's introductory slides, as the mass production of war came home to build levitt towns across suburban America, while too many textured neighborhoods of cities became the foundations for the new national highway system. For Goff, automation and the machine were a threat to individual genius and creativity. Beware of computeritis. It's 2025. I've spent nearly a quarter century's journey exploring the meaning of Goff, Green, and others of the American School. The tools and context have changed, but the tension between efficiency, originality, and authorship remains. And as we gather here in downtown San Francisco, a city shaped by waves of innovation and reinvention, at the edge of the Pacific Ocean, from where we can practically go no further west before we're in the east again, the sun is setting. What will we be deliberating at the next sunrise? Tonight, I'll be heading on a red-eye flight back to Oklahoma to finish preparing for the new school year. Which questions should my faculty and colleagues and I direct towards our students? How must we challenge our profession? In other words, what may define the American School of tomorrow? Certainly, our American School project will continue to unravel and exhibit new layers of our past. But how will we, in today's context, define and enact a new American school that awaits our examination? And so, with the power invested in me as Dean of the American School of Architecture, I get to assign homework. We all get homework tonight. Please join me in considering this question. How will each of us leverage our creativity, our sense of place, and our responsibility to meet the challenges that matter most to our communities today and tomorrow? As we consider the future of the American school, the question is no longer simply whether we can express ourselves. The digital age has given us an abundance of tools, from apps and handheld devices to social media and countless other platforms. These make creativity more accessible than ever, but they also risk flattening our voices, pulling us towards the same patterns, the same aesthetics, until originality becomes harder to distinguish. We cannot ignore AI. AI, remember, is built to remember. It accelerates what already exists. Our task is to use it without letting it flatten the particular, the place-based, the personal. When creativity grows from the specific character of a place, it can answer needs far beyond aesthetics, shaping connections, solving real problems, and leaving an imprint that serves communities in lasting ways. It must be paired with the ability to think critically and a newfound will to empower it. So while the American school is anchored by context, resourcefulness, and experimentation, there is a fourth value less often considered: entrepreneurship. By entrepreneurship, I mean the ability to turn vision into reality, much as we heard about Post Ranch Inn. To lead with the securing of resources, assembling the partnerships, and creating the conditions for ideas to serve not just families, but communities. If we want architecture to truly meet the challenges ahead, our graduates must pair creativity and responsibility with the confidence to make their projects happen. After all, who is better prepared to develop healthier, more resilient places than those trained to imagine and build them? We may spend more time considering the path of American school and Bay Area architect Donald McDonald in the room tonight. First, a traditional architect, his career has involved with intention, from designing starter homes and pursuing affordable housing projects, to challenging policymakers, to finding creative ways to serve the underrepresented and experiencing homelessness, and ultimately serving urban communities worldwide through bridge design. McDonald has also questioned the power assumed and held by developers. Should we as architects simply wait for the phone to ring, hoping for permission from clients to take on the kinds of societal, environmental, and infrastructural challenges that urgently need our attention? Donald's path reminds us of what's possible when we seize more ground for our creativity to work in service to people and place, so that architecture can be deeply rooted, effective, and boldly forward-looking. And that, I believe, is exactly what Goff's challenge points us towards. Do not try to remember, not by forgetting the past, but by refusing to let it set the limits on how we practice and what we imagine, build, and contribute to our communities next. Please do stay around for the silent auction and travel home safely. And of course, thank you and good night.
Thank you, everyone. Let's enjoy our reception. Consider bidding on some of these incredible reproductions. Quick note.
Hi, guys. Sorry. I just want to let you know that